This resume landed someone a Salesforce developer job paying well over 6 figures. I'm going to break down what appeals to me about the resume. If I'm a hiring manager, what's my first impression when I'm looking at it within the first 5 seconds? I'll break down the work experience and the bullet points for each of them to understand the story that the person is telling about themselves. Then we're going to take a look at their project work to see how it complements their skill set. Then we'll look at their skills and education sections. Let's get started with analyzing the macro level parts of their resume. Even though this person has many years of experience, the resume is still only one page. I also like how the format of this resume looks overall. The companies they've worked for are bolded, and the roles that they've held at each organization are italicized. The most striking part of this resume is there's a one-sentence summary of their role at each company. The look and feel of the resume also flows nicely. It's easy for someone to look at this and not dread reading a mountain of text. Everything is strategically placed, and if there were a resume format to follow, it would be this one. Work experience, projects, skills, education, it's all there. What's also good to note is that the text on the resume isn't some fancy font that would distract the reader. Rather, it's very clean and easy to read. Whenever we're building this resume, we don't want to do anything that's going to distract the reader. We want them to be able to focus on the meat and potatoes of the accomplishments that we've had as a Salesforce professional, instead of getting distracted by screenshots of certifications that you have. If you have a certification, you can just write it as text. Let's see what else. There's no fluff, there's no pizzazz, it's just text, which is a good thing in the context of a resume. Now, let's talk about work experience. They're the go-to person across 5 engineering departments. At a high level, this is a great summary of what they've done. To summarize one thing about them. Okay, great. We're the go-to Salesforce person across much of an engineering department at a company. I can start to put in my head what that means. Person gets a request. Can we do this in Salesforce? Can you do that in Salesforce? How long would it take to do X in Salesforce? This developer is getting these types of questions. And it's a great summary that lets me start thinking about what they do on a day-to-day basis. And that introductory statement about them being the go-to Salesforce person compels me to continue reading. Well, what else did they do? It says that they own Salesforce architecture and software development at the company, and they're responsible for the tactical and strategic Salesforce application development for the revenue, the operations, and the customer success teams. I also don't see anything about how big the Salesforce org was, but this helps serve as an alternative. I don't know how many engineering departments that this person's worked with, and they're probably working with a pretty decently sized Salesforce team. You've also rolled out a DevOps solution that increased the speed of software delivery by 45%. Here, I'm curious to know what the DevOps solution was. Was it something homegrown? Was it something that was implemented off the shelf? Did you partner with a vendor? What was the level of involvement that you had? Because you could be the person that drove it, or you could have just been a bystander. So for me, I'd like to know what the level of involvement was for this particular bullet point. Moving on. They've also had some M&A experience. They've integrated and acquired companies' systems into the acquiring companies' systems, which drove an increase in sales and additionally provided leadership insight into how the acquisition was doing. Here, it's no surprise that an acquiring company wants to know how their acquisition is doing. How are they going to benefit from this? It seems that this person played a role in communicating how it was going because they were ultimately the ones integrating these key data pipelines from the acquired company into Salesforce. At their second most recent company, they were responsible for a team of 5 Salesforce professionals and a Salesforce user base of about 30,000 people. They did a lot of Salesforce CPQ work because typically the strongest bullet point will be at the top, followed by the second, followed by the third, and so forth. They're also qualifying the complexity of their org by talking about how many users are there, how many products and configurations there are, how many price rules, quote terms, templates, and approval rules. The 30,000 users in conjunction with the 200 plus sales users jumps out to me though. I want to know if the user base that was using this also includes community users, because 200 plus sales users for a 30,000 employee company seems a bit lopsided. More likely than not, this is a 30,000 user community, That's my guess here. I played a key role in reducing sales rep quote time from 15 to 5 minutes. This represents a significant improvement in efficiency here. In order to achieve that, it looks like they consolidated these product offerings, they automated the renewal opportunity motion for standard deals, and they made some tweaks to their approval process. Although it's not apparent here that there was Salesforce development in these efforts because I don't see anything specifying Salesforce here, they demonstrate an ability to optimize these business processes and increase productivity, which are the cornerstone of the reason why someone would want to get Salesforce in the first place. I also like this achievement because it involved reducing the sales rep time by 10 minutes per rep on average, which can have a substantial impact on the company's bottom line. And overall, this bullet point underscores this person's understanding about how Salesforce can be leveraged to improve these business outcomes and get some tangible results, some measurable results here from 15 to 5 minutes, which makes it an excellent bullet point addition to the resume. I think it's a great storyline here. They also led development efforts for the post-sales processes at the company, which, based on the reading here, is helping drive about $55 million in annual recurring revenue. This achievement here demonstrates their ability to drive significant business outcomes through their expertise in the Salesforce ecosystem and how their understanding of it can be used as a tool to make business processes more efficient that happen after the close of a sale. So this person mentions that they consolidated process builders and introduced a singular trigger framework, which ended up resulting in a 55% reduction in execution time, which is a significant improvement. What's really impressive about this is that it impacts not just Salesforce users, but my guess is the sales team and customer success teams and even external stakeholders who might interact with Salesforce and perform some sort of save transaction or update transaction that would have kicked off one of these triggers. So basically anyone who uses Salesforce or integrates with it would have benefited from this optimization. I like how this bullet point demonstrates the person's ability to identify a pain and implement a solution that will drive these efficiency gains and increase productivity across the organization. Company number 2. They kept 2 Salesforce instances in sync in real time. This is a pretty big task. Why was that necessary in the first place? What was the use case for wanting to maintain 100,000 records in sync in real time? How did you do it? What were the pitfalls of doing that? This is intriguing, and it makes me curious to learn more. They also led a team of 3 developers. There's also more M&A experience that they had early on in their career as well. They migrated quoting functionality from the acquired company. Putting my interviewer cap on, I want to know how this works because 2 separate quoting functionalities within the same Salesforce instances would be, my guess would be is that it's not an easy undertaking, but that point aside, it's making me think. And that leads me to conclude that I want to talk with this person and ask them how they did it instead of reading their resume and thinking this person doesn't have the experience to be the developer or architect that we're hiring for. They've also developed Lightning components and they're used in the Lightning console and other custom applications, which is good stuff. At a macro level, the resume's work experience bullet points really shine through. They tell a compelling story about the person so far. For example, by keeping 2 Salesforce instances in sync, they have the development and integration experience. Then, they became responsible for a Salesforce team. And then, they became the go-to person for several engineering functions. We can see a career progression from the role as a Salesforce developer just a few years ago. Salesforce seemingly is just one of the many things that they've had to touch over the years. And we see that in the story that they tell in their bullet points and in the succinct 1-sentence summaries on what they've done. Imagine a hiring manager who's sifting through resumes. It will be a welcome respite to see clarity in a resume, which will keep this person engaged, read more, and read more, if not all, of what you've put on paper. And they even extend that to the project. So let's go ahead and jump into projects. Auto renewals. They automated the renewals process at the company and saved leadership several hours per month, which C-level execs get paid a lot. I want to know the monetary value. They auto-generate and send renewal quotes and nurture emails to several customers ahead of their renewal dates. I'm curious, what were the tools they used? Sure, they used Salesforce to do something, but what other tools played a role here? What other systems played a role here? If they were to add this information, it would be longer than one page. That's likely why it's not here. It would ruin the aesthetics of the resume, which I can tell they spent a lot of time working on getting it right. Let's move to the rule engine. They removed the need to recreate a deployment 50 plus times. That's the benefit. I'd like to know how they measure that, though. They architected and developed the rule engine and executed it and maintained it separately from the application code. And although there's no reference to anything in Salesforce, my suspicion is that because it's here, it's Salesforce related. I also want to know how this played a role in helping Salesforce devs, admins, and end users benefit. How do people who are on this Salesforce org benefit by having this rule engine? They didn't have to deploy things 50 plus times, which is a huge time saver, but what else was the benefit? I'm sure there are other things. They made a custom Visualforce framework, all built in Salesforce. This dynamic Apex framework enables these admins to edit Visualforce pages and SOQL queries via Salesforce records. Since Visualforce is outdated, you're going to see companies nowadays either use Aura components or, more likely than not, Lightning Web components to build out their UI. Visualforce, this old scripting language that was around 2014 or 2015 when Aura came out, it's going out the door. Not a lot have used it anymore. I suspect they wanted to put this project in because it was a significant amount of work and it saved people a lot of time. And also coming up with a design and solution and architecture for this was probably a time-consuming task, and it makes sense why someone would want to include it, even though Visualforce isn't necessarily around much anymore in the developer mindshare because there's Auras and Lightning Web components that they could use to, like I mentioned earlier, build out their UIs. Let's talk about the skill section. It looks like this person has broken down their skills into several categories, including strategic, programmatic, business, and apps. At first glance, the skills section might seem a bit crowded, especially if you've already read through the resume bullet points and you have a good understanding of their skills and experience. But upon closer inspection, I noticed that they have specific skill sets that align with what they've included in their work experience and projects. So for example, they have experience with DocuSign, they've written DACs, they're familiar with APIs, and they have some exposure to the DevOps ecosystem. That being said, not everyone values the skill sections equally. Some people may find it helpful to get a quick overview of a candidate's competencies, but others might not put much weight on it at all. It's important here to strike a balance between highlighting these key skills and then showcasing the relevant work experience and accomplishments that you've had. Ultimately, what matters most is that a candidate can demonstrate how their skills and experience make them a strong fit for the job and the company they're applying to. Education, they've got the university there. They have their degree where what they did differently is that they told a story about what they learned. As you see, algorithms, data structures, software engineering, discrete math, cloud computing. Adding a few courses that you took as a byline on your undergraduate degree can be beneficial in a few ways. So the first thing is it highlights your relevant skills. Putting these relevant courses on your resume can showcase your skills and knowledge in a particular field, and you can demonstrate to employers that you have a strong foundation in the area. It's going to be particularly helpful if the courses you took are directly related to the job that you're applying for. In this case, it does have a pretty good relationship. Second, you can actually stand out from other candidates. So having courses that are relevant to the job you're applying for can make you stand out from the rest who have similar degrees. So after a hiring manager has looked over several applications for a Salesforce position, who do you think they're going to remember? The person who shovels every single experience they've ever had for the past 20 years on 8 pages? Or someone who's carefully crafted a resume that tells a story, doesn't waste any space, and lets their accomplishments shine through? What is this person going to be remembered as? It seems that they want it to be painted as the Salesforce developer who's built interesting internal products, has seen some M&A work, and has led Salesforce development teams. They've also got some pretty slick results too. A high-paying 6-figure Salesforce job doesn't sound too shabby. Maybe I should give them a call.